Welcome, welcome to Freaked Out with your psychic medium host, Liz. We like to come here to hang out and chat with spirits. The questions are sometimes chilling, and of course, the seas never forget. Today's episode, we are quite literally doing a deep dive. Unfortunately, it's into one of the most tragic, haunted, maritime stories in history, and I'm referencing Titanic. I personally sailed through the waters of where the Titanic had actually sunk. Not the exact spot, but close enough. And I gotta tell you guys, that was probably one of the most uncomfortable moments of my life. I was not anticipating any of that. I kept hearing the most intense sounds. I was freaking out. I had also got myself an edible because I do not do well with being seasick, and that also heightened my senses even more. It felt like in the movie The Little Mermaid, when we walk through Ursula's cave and we see all of those lost souls grabbing onto you and trying to pull you in. That is exactly what happened to me. They were overwhelming me, like, help, help, help. We need you. Where have you been? Save us. And then as we continued to sail on, I kept hearing this. We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. Now, again, I was super freaked out, and I turned to Landon and I was like, we are making a big mistake coming out here. And I was referencing Newfoundland. The pain that I felt in my chest, it was almost like my lungs were filling up slowly with water, and it felt like a balloon and it was about to pop. It was so intense. So if you are sensitive to that, highly recommend preparing yourself, because I was not anticipating what happened. So today we're going to cover a bunch of questions you guys have had for me specifically. And then next week, we are going to be covering the Titan. On Tuesday of next week, the episode drops, and I cannot wait to watch it. And we're going to do a full-blown episode. I also have another episode coming out within the next few days, probably very early on next week. Felon 47, Dump Part 2. So you can anticipate that one as well. So let's get into it. Oh yes, before we do, please guys, make sure to like, comment, and share this video, because we want to keep getting people to come and watch us over here. Alrighty, so many souls. I couldn't even count on my hands, fingers, and toes how to channel through this energy, and I needed a little help, but this is what I got so far. So most of the spirits associated with the Titanic accepted their fate, crossed over, and went to heaven. But there were a few not so good spirits, trapping some really good spirits. So involved is like this tangled of a mess web down there. And there's also like a female sea creature that also feeds off of negative energy as well. So a lot of people have asked me, like, was this destined to happen? Was it supposed to happen? We're going to get into all of that too. There were a lot of like greedy men stepping on the heads of those poor men, basically got caught in the line of fire when it comes to being stuck. There were people like killing other people. For instance, there was one man that I don't have a lot of details, but he dressed very nicely. He was behind this other man who was going to be able to get on a boat for whatever reason, and he decided that he was going to take his life so he can take his spot. But I do see karma hit that guy very quickly, and I believe something big fell on him, so he didn't even make it on the boat, and now his soul is stuck down there. I keep hearing like Derek and Johnson. So maybe it's a Derek Johnson. I see the captain, Edward John Smith, constantly shaking his head. The issue with Edward John, which he's referencing, he likes the name John more, so we're going to go with that. He was obviously preparing for retirement at the time that the Titanic went down. He had a sinking feeling that something bad was going to happen. But because so many people assured him and reassured him that things were going to be okay, he decided to go forward with it, give him and his partner a nice little bonus to end his, career. They also promised him glory and that his names would be in the paper and people would want to interview him and he might make more money doing it. And a big fat check on the way. Who wouldn't say yes? Unfortunately, as fate had it, he wasn't able to leave that ship. And somewhere deep down inside, like I said earlier, he knew. Now, he looked calm on the surface, but inside he was checked out. He constantly kept replaying his life over and over again, wishing he had listened more, said more, traveled more, fought more. He shows me that there were a lot of men that were trying to buy their way off that ship. And from what he shows me, he physically fought somebody. And this person still wasn't getting it. And there were a few moments where people did try to bribe their way onto the lifeboat, not on his watch. He wasn't letting anyone get away with that. I commend him for that. He's not a stuck spirit. I wouldn't say he's stuck. I feel like he's with his family, but he does go and frequent that spot often and constantly shaking his head at all of what had taken place. He had made a lot of good choices, so karma wasn't going to be instant for him at all. Thomas Andrews. Now, Thomas, had a little bit of a cocky moment, believing that he had built something extraordinary, which he did, but the guilt still haunts him. The screams, the chaos. He actually still wanders the area, not because he's stuck, but because he feels incredibly responsible, wondering if he could have done more to save more. Obviously, the lifeboats, they needed more on that ship. He didn't do that because they were telling him, hey, not enough space. But in reality, they could have put a lot more on there. From what I can see from him, he has yet to let it go. And I personally tried to channel him and say, hey, man, we know that this happened. I understand that you feel responsible, but you need to let this go. And he has zero interest in doing that. He refuses to cross over and go to the other side until all of these souls, including the ones that are not so good, find their way out of this haunted area. Now, Isidore and Ida Strauss, so many of you guys have asked me about this couple, and I think it's super romantic. So yes, Ida did have a spot on the lifeboat, but she preferred to stay with her husband. I'd say that this was the sweetest of all stories. We'll get to that in a moment, but I would definitely do the same. From what I can see from both of them, they held on to each other and prayed and hoped that it would be quick. They tried their hardest to, hold on to each other until the moment things happened. And from what I gather, they were kind of ripped apart from each other due to the water tension. And obviously they both drowned and died, but the two of them together did cross over, do still visit the spot sometimes, refusing to come back to Earth at this point, but will eventually come back. But the two of them for now are just together and spending their time together. They lost each other for about 10 to 15 minutes and then found their way back to each other in spirit. Benjamin Gunningham, the guy who dressed up like a gentleman to go down. People ask, was it noble? Was it arrogant? I'm getting the vibe of arrogance. From what I can see, he knew that he wasn't going to be getting off that ship, or he decided to, make sure other people got off the ship. So that aspect was good. And he didn't even try to get off the ship once he realized what they were dealing with. But he just wanted to show his wealth and his money, and that makes a proper man. So in my vibe, very arrogant. Dude is still pretty rich in the world. He's definitely reincarnated, come back. He might have had recollection of this when he was a child, but he has yet to get back on a ship by any means. I don't ever feel like he'll ever get on a ship again, regardless of his lifetime, because it traumatized him so heavily. But yeah, I'd say he's like an older gentleman now, not as old as I anticipated, but I'd say he's probably heading into his 50s, 60s. That's the vibe I'm picking up on. And he's still quite as arrogant. There was a child by the name of Sidney Goodwin. Now, this child was unknown for a while. I believe that he was sleeping at the time of his passing. Peaceful and unaware, thankfully. He has since reincarnated. I think he's actually pretty young now, maybe sitting at about like 8 or 9 years old. Now, if your child ever speaks to you in relation to being on the Titanic, it is very possible that your child is a reincarnation of Sydney. Don't ignore it, by the way. If your kids start rambling on about something that you don't understand, record it, A. And B, this is them being aware of their past lives because they remember things that we may not understand. But a lot of people were worried that this child got lost in the mix and, you know, soul in general was gone, but they're okay. Thankfully, they passed away quickly, way before we even got to the point of Titanic drowning. Now, John Jacob Astor, now he helped his pregnant wife onto the lifeboat, and it was said that he had actually got hit by like a smokestack collapsing on him. And from what I see, that is absolutely true. He was quite a cocky one, trying to pay his way to get on a lifeboat. He tried to work the system. I even feel like he may even be capable and possibly hurt others to get ahead. But obviously, when push comes to shove in that situation, money means nothing. Although some of them were able to get away with it, he specifically had instant karma. I also keep seeing something like, I know he had a pregnant wife, but there was another child bride out there, or a woman, a young girl that was not on the ship that he had impregnated as well. And also out there too, having some sort of claim on him in regards to having a baby. I feel like he got quite a few women pregnant out there. So his speed was like just running rampant all over the place. But from what I gather, he is one of the spirits that are stuck down there. His wife obviously, got onto the lifeboat, but he tried to find her after she died, and she had zero interest in going to him whatsoever. She found out about all the shady things he did in real life. Like the people on the boat that were chit-chatting with her informed her of all of the things that he had done, and she was pissed. At the same time, although upset for her children, glad that he wasn't around anymore because he was very problematic. The band that decided to play as the ship was going down. I would say that they were genuine souls. I feel like they were heroes. I feel like they wanted to make sure that they kept the energy at a little bit more of a calm, relaxing pace. And I think that's why they decided to go forward. And when I was crossing those waters, I can literally hear the violin playing. So I'm going to make that assumption that they are still down there. I don't necessarily think that they're lost in the water, but I definitely feel like they went down with the ship and stayed down there with the ship. But they were scared. As they were doing this, as the music played on, they were frightened, they were pushing. Things were happening around them, but they kept on, even at the point where they were in the water. They were looking for each other as they were dying. So here's the other part we're going to talk about. I feel a deep rage from the third class passengers. Obviously, many of them were trapped, literally locked below deck. Just like the movie said, parents trying to protect their children, trying to protect themselves, screaming prayers. So many of them still linger, so many of them confused. Some are angry, and some are looking for the sky. A lot of those souls, although some got away, are underneath and holding down the bad people as well. Those spirits have and had a lot of rage, which built within them, and it also called to this sea witch as well. It's pretty intense down there. Yeah. Obviously, we still live in a society where there's classes against classes, even though it's not necessarily stated that way anymore, but let's call a spade, and it is truly that way. This was one of those moments showing us from the past that it always matters, even if the money in that exact moment may not help you, but it helps in the long run. And let's say something happened on Earth. I'm sure that anyone who didn't have, a six-figure income and a large quantity of money isn't going to get saved. We'll all get left here. It was more so, I don't feel like it was meant to happen, but it was meant to happen in the sense of learning from it, trying to step away from the class society, try to treat everyone equally, and God forbid anyone can do that. Now let's talk about the sea witch. And there's a lot to talk about when it comes to her as well, but I'm going to express on what I feel. Those waters have a lot of sea creatures that we have yet to come in contact with. For instance, a Loch Ness monster. There's a few of them around the world, but there's a few over in that area just because of how big it is. There's a sea witch energy. There's a Bigfoot on the Newfoundland island. There's a few Bigfoots. And then there's also little fairies as well. And some people describe them to be mean. I don't think they're mean. I just don't think they like kids because kids are noisy and, can hurt them. So that's why they don't like children. But they like people in general, and they stay away from people because they're afraid of them, but they prefer adults over kids. Anyways, this sea witch is more so, it's not in the same way as Ursula. I know we're thinking about Ursula, but that's not the vibe. I'm seeing more of like a mermaid that's kind of like black in energy, a black fin. Definitely have more of like green shimmery type of skin. She's gorgeous and she will pull you in, but she is not a good energy. She was created, it's like a sea demon. So it's not an actual person and never was, but it's like the dark depths of the earth. I do believe that the Titanic contributed to her energy, which is why she's more powerful. But in reality, she's more so somebody that can't necessarily hurt or harm those who are still alive, but she has enough ability to create any sort of catastrophic weather-related issues and cause the water to ripple or hurt people or crash waves or whatever the case may be. A lot of people that go missing in Newfoundland are never, ever found because A, they're usually in the water, and that water pulls them in, including this sea witch. It all pulls it in. If you ever lose somebody in Newfoundland, it's a difficult place to get those bodies back ever because of all of the water. She collects the souls and she feeds on the desperation and the fear and the helplessness to feed her in order to continue to keep making that area dark. And she has claimed the ship, the Titanic, as her own. So here's some other questions you guys have asked me. Was the ship truly doomed by a curse, or was it the engineering? I don't believe that the Titanic was fated to doom. Although we all have those final destination parts in our lives, and yes, when it's your time, it's your time. But I don't feel like this particular thing was supposed to happen. I don't even feel like the engineering failed. It was like a design flaw, really. This would be the only way to kind of, hurt it. Everyone was so cocky, and Mother Nature was like, no, 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 you don't control things. That's how it happened. But yeah, definitely a flaw in the design. And no, I don't believe that they were doomed. Once it all happened, when all the tragedy took place, and that anyone now going in that direction, definitely doomed, or could potentially be doomed, like the Titan. And as for the engineering, it wasn't intentionally careless, but they weren't prepared for the worst, like the cosmic punchline. Now, did anyone on the boat sense that this was going to happen? I absolutely believe, without a doubt, that there was a psychic on board. Maybe not one that came out and told everyone they were psychic, but I feel like somebody felt an instant stomach drop once they got on that ship and wanted off. And people were telling her she was crazy. Shocker. I get that all the time too. Now, like the movie said, if the Titanic had hit the ship directly, I think they would have been able to at least not have it sink as quickly as it had. It might have moved a lot slower. They might have been able to organize things a little bit more. People could have been saved. My vibe is that this hit was way worse than just doing what they were trying to do to avoid it in the first place. Oh yeah, and the name of the psychic I'm picking up on is Ophelia. And no, I'm not referencing Mama Tot. I wouldn't say she was wealthy or well-known, but I feel like she was deeply intuitive and part of the third class on that ship. I would say that her energy is still down there. She's not trapped, but she's not exactly trying to leave either. She also wants to help those spirits get out of there. Now, there were a lot of comments about alleged cursed Titanic artifacts. There was something called the Titanic cursed mummy. Although this was already debunked, I do want to talk about it. I keep feeling like there was some sort of mummy aboard, but I don't feel like it was cursed. And I think it was more like a replica. And I think it was like miniature size. I don't feel like it was a human or a person. I don't know. That's what I feel. Maybe like a doll. But there was definitely something aboard. I wouldn't say it was haunted. But if you were to find this now, I wouldn't keep it in my house because it holds and hoards all that dark energy. It would be powerful now. The wreck wood and coral souvenirs. People have recovered some of these things and sold them off to collectors. And some of these owners are claiming like nightmares, unexplained misfortune, and cold spots in their home. I would not ever bring this into my home because you are quite literally bringing a piece of that energy, including the sea witch and all those stuck people pissed off. And here you are getting to live your own life. They don't want to be part of your collection. So yeah, you're going to have bad dreams and misfortune. I would not have any of that stuff in my home. There were also wall paintings that were from the first class lounge that were also obtained. And people who have displayed or touched these feel cold drafts, even phantom piano music. Again, these spirits are trying to show you what happened. I'm not surprised that the energy held on to these items. Of course, you're going to feel cold. It was freezing out there. And this is also in the Titanic Museum, the Titanic Belfast, I believe it's called. I would probably throw up going in there because it's too much. And it still holds on to like privilege and panic and sudden doom for anyone who touches it. Be prepared. Something bad could happen to you. So just be careful. Of course, a cursed mirror, because why is there always a cursed mirror? Now, the mirror was claimed to have belonged to Edward John, the captain, and people claim that his face shows through the mirror each year of the anniversary. That does not surprise me in the slightest. He felt like he failed, that he didn't do his job. He's showing through his own eyes the pain of what he went through. He is very attached to any item, so I wouldn't be surprised if you feel his energy with anything. He is a very active spirit, and anyone can call upon this guy because he feels heavily responsible. And anything Titanic related, he's very much involved in. He's part of that spot. I would also anticipate the Sea Witch could also alter that energy too. And maybe it's not always John coming through. It could be the Sea Witch trying to pretend it's John and pulling your energy. And then if that happens, that Sea Witch could potentially push you over the water's edge and you could possibly drown. And not necessarily in that area, but just drowning in general. She loves when people drown. But yeah, I wouldn't keep that cracked mirror. I would throw it away. I know it's memorabilia and I get all of that, but at least lock it away in a way that people can't touch it or, associate with it or whatever the case may be. Crazy. And then there was also a ring that was recovered, which is interesting because I feel like there was definitely a romantic, story that happened within the Titanic that wasn't obviously Jack and Rose, but another pairing. And although this ring may have been, given to somebody on the ship specifically, or rather not quite yet, I feel like an engagement of a romance was coming. And I do feel like this woman and man, there might have been some poverty level for one of them, but then they got rich and the two of them got on this ship together and they had planned to elope in New York, come back and tell their family they were married. And I even believe the woman was pregnant. So that ring is pretty significant. And I wouldn't be surprised if you feel a female energy pregnant and a man also associated with that ring. Feels like a bit of a forbidden love, which is why they were eloping. Honestly, probably one of the most romantic stories on there. And from what I gather, they also did not leave each other's side. They died together. And I don't feel like they were in a third class situation at the time, but I feel like they got stuck in the third class situation. Very similar to Jack and Rose. It's almost quite eerie on all of the similarities between the two of them. Obviously, not everything's the same, but the intensity of the story was. There was also a pocket watch found near a victim's body, and it causes electrical disturbances. And it stopped at the exact same time of those people's deaths, which is obviously crazy. Time stopped, time shifted. If you're ever looking to, get some knowledge or energy from any sort of items, I'd say this one was probably the safest one. And then of course there were letters and luggages found as well. And a lot of people feel like these items are like whispering to them, and they are. Now, why do people dream about the Titanic that have never been or had an experience from the Titanic? Well, we don't know. You could have had a past life from the Titanic. But also, you could have had family members associated with the Titanic. It was a big deal back then, and every single person. Nowadays, we can find out news very fast. News doesn't travel as quickly back then, but this did. And from what I can see, there are a lot of past lives associated with this one. And a lot of these people that were on the Titanic are still very entangled in that energy. So if you did have memories of being in a situation where you're sunk or trapped or something, your dreams might be trying to tell you something. Are the trapped souls afraid of being forgotten? I would say that they're anxiety and panicked and riddled with that kind of thing. But at this point, time doesn't go in the same direction as it does for us. Time can go very fast or it can go very slow. It really depends on the spirit or the entity that's kind of down there. But what I plan to do personally is I have already tried to channel a few spirits, just the names, the list of names that have, crossed over or passed on, try to see if I can at least help and maneuver. But these spirits are so embedded in their anxiety, it's difficult to do so, but I'm not going to stop trying. Once I get to that point, I will let you guys know with an update. And I want to let you know who I've connected to and how it went down and all of that. There's even a spirit that wants to connect to a piece of the Titanic, but I have no idea how to get that. So I'm hoping I can obtain something small to help them out. Fingers crossed. Not that I'll be able to, but I mean, eBay does some stuff, right? Let me know in the comments if you know of anyone selling any sort of connection to the Titanic from something that was deep within the waters. When it comes to the Titanic, it is no longer just a ship. There is a portal there. This portal can bring anything in. The spirits are still talking. Some still want justice. Some just want to be remembered. But one thing's for sure, that sea is still very angry and, of course, hasn't released them all. But if you think this episode was chilling, wait till you hear the Titan. Yikes. And these spirits are no longer quiet. But anyways, guys, that is everything I have for today on Titanic. I hope you enjoyed. Please drop any comments you may have. We'll make a comeback for another episode of Titanic at some point. So until next time, guys, stay freaked out.